I thought today we'd just do some very simple fashion studies. I've pulled a few things from Pinterest, just the first few things that came up. So they're not the most exciting of references. I definitely want to get back in the habit of using my own, but they're good enough to study from. So I thought I'd do some continuous line. I've talked about continuous line umpteen times, I'm sure, along with just drawing straight lines and, you know, all that sort of boring stuff. But I find continuous line quite useful in order to improve my line quality. I don't tend to, is it feathering? That thing where people go like that a lot. It sort of stops me doing that as much. And it's just fun. It's a fun way to break down the image, something that's quite complicated, and work your way through it in a very flowing and what's the word I'm looking for? You don't mind making a mistake with a continuous line, or I don't. So it takes you out your head a little bit. Anyway, so for most of these, I start top center of whatever it is I'm drawing, and I just slowly work my way through. It's the first drawing of the day, so I don't have high hopes necessarily, but it's a great little start of the day. Oh, I lifted my hand up. Yeah, the idea is that you don't lift your hand up, but that's fine. If you do, you just put it back where the line was. Now, it's great for figure. I mean, you can do it with anything, but it's good for figure for me. It's kind of easier to do when clothes aren't involved. Like if you're doing certain animals, things like fish are easier because there's not feathers or whatever to deal with. Added detail can be tricky, but then it's good practice to see through some of that detail, break things down a little bit. And as you can see, the proportions are a little bit off, but it can look nice to go back in and adjust things a little bit. But it's just a pressure-free way of getting a complicated form down. And the idea is that you probably stopped by now, but I'm just looking through. Yeah. And then, of course, because it's quite a quick thing to do, you can look back and go, right, well, that was, you know, certain parts work, what doesn't work, that, you know, the jacket could be shorter, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite a handy, quick, like I say, I keep thinking unintrusive, but that isn't the right word, but it's low stakes, you know. And you could just treat it as a silhouette. So I might try and do that. Although I tend to prefer working back to front a little bit. We'll try and do a silhouette. Just eyeballing the proportions as I go. So the back of that shirt is roughly lined up, give or take a few inches with the back of the head. The back of the leg is roughly lined up with the back of that untucked shirt. And it's little things like that I'm constantly looking at. It means that the way I draw is never super accurate. I prefer that flowing, embrace of the mistake, but also just trying your best, you know. Now, I said this was going to be a silhouette, but I've already started adding details in there, but it's only an example. I've done so many of these throughout the years that it's kind of hard to block certain instincts. So we'll go back in, add a little bit of detail. But the idea is to just start making something. You can say to yourself, well, this is going to be full of mistakes, full of holes. But that isn't the point, is it? You know, the point is to just make something, get it started, and then you can look back and go, well, actually I learned a little bit about proportion from doing that, or, you know, I'm slowing myself down a little bit and being more observant. Well, that's the loose idea of it. So again, by no means perfect, the head's way too big, but there are little things that you can work your way through. Try and do something, I'll do a running. Alright, we'll try and be a little bit slower. I'll try and not worry about saying things. Because that's the other thing, you know, trying to do something like this and talk can be a little bit tricky. And of course you could do this in pencil and then ink over the top. Something I've started experimenting a little bit with. Started using different mediums, different combinations of mediums, and I have started playing around with pencil a little bit more, doing things like under sketches. Just to see how things can build up, and there's something quite beautiful about having that history in a piece, because as lovely and clean as straight to ink is, there is something really nice about seeing the marks that led to the finished piece, or whatever it is. So I'm playing around with things like that. It's also fun to leave marks out. So leave the detail of the top of that leg out. Just move a little bit. Not paying attention to the camera, sorry. I go all whispery, don't I, when I'm concentrating. I don't know, maybe that's nice. I don't know. I occasionally get compliments on my voice being soothing. Maybe I'll lean into it. Be one of those AMSR, whatever they're called. So yeah, as you can see, with slowing down a little bit, taking a bit more time to look. Try not to worry about the fact that I'm recording myself. And of course you can go back up and go through some of these marks. If you go where the darker, where the shade hits, you could, you know, add a bit of detail there, a bit of interest. You could only focus on where the shade hits as a means to create the line. It's kind of only limited by what you can force upon it, you know. It's tricky doing faces. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing faces this way. Unless you're working a bit bigger, maybe. Or something I always struggle with. You do whatever you fancy. Yeah. I've said before, these aren't in tutorial videos. I'm not into the idea of telling you what you should do. So we'll leave it there. So again, it's fine. It is what it is. And I think that's something that we need to start taking away. And it's something I'd try and teach myself, or tell myself. You know, you've brought something into existence. Don't necessarily have to throw shade on it, you know. Like, yes, it isn't that exactly, but that already exists, and this is new, and this can be its own thing. And again, I try and toe the line a little bit when it comes to what's realistic and what's playful and what's expressive, and you've got to find your own balance with that, I think. So we'll do one more. I'll get a different colour pen, bear with me. Be a bit noisy. Right, we'll go red, even though I don't think it picks it up very well, but hey ho. So I've been on a real study kick this last month. And I've been trying to throw as many things on the page as possible just to not use up too much paper, especially as I've moved to slightly nicer paper. I was using just really cheap printer paper, but it wasn't taking very well to certain things, and I wanted to, like I say, experiment with different mediums, start using dip ink a little bit more, start using watercolour, things like that. So things have certainly changed, but I'm on a real study kick, like I say. All of which I will be sharing. So I've taken a little bit of a backseat with social media. I'm trying different methods and ways of sharing what I do. And one of which will be a downloadable art book that's hopefully going to be a monthly thing, and it's going to be a way to share everything that I've been working on, the good, the bad, like I keep saying, I've been doing a lot of experimenting, so there's all of that, there's all the messy stuff going to be included in that. I've been scanning everything in as I go. It might not be the most exciting of books. I'll write a little bit in the beginning, maybe, but yeah, it's just going to be a new way to try and keep everything together, to document, to keep things transparent, keeps things fun, gives me a reason to practice, which is kind of what social media was for a little while. And I'm not disappearing entirely. I was toying with the idea of moving away from social media, but it is really nice to chat to people, you know, and find people and other creatives, and I get stuck in bad routines with social media in terms of, like I said, using it as a practice tool first and foremost. So making sure that I had something to share at 3 o'clock every weekday and all of this sort of stuff. And it led to me just doing really what I'd consider, you know, simple things that I do all the time. Not really that interesting for me, maybe not too interesting for the person watching it. But it was all stuff that worked, and it was all you know, it became content, and I don't really want to be a content creator. You know, I kind of hate the term. I jokingly use it every now and again, but you know, I don't feel like. Well, hopefully, you know, if you're making art, if you're an artist, whatever the case, you know, even like literature or, you know, I mean, music isn't content, and all this stuff isn't necessarily content, but we throw that on it like it needs to be a product, it needs to be this and that to fit into the way that we've, you know, this sort of like modern thing that we do, which all sort of feels like nonsense. And, you know, isn't as fun as it was. I think I've been around a while on Instagram, and, you know, I sound like this grumpy old guy, but it was definitely more focused on community, and I kind of want to get back to that in a sense. And by leaving social media, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna really benefit personally. You know, if I want to find a community, you know, I'm sheltering myself from that sort of thing isn't necessarily the best idea. Sorry, I'm waffling. I'm trying to do like 2 or 3 things at once. But anyway, I'm creating a downloadable art book. It's going to have some music alongside it, so I've trying to find different ways of creativity again. And I never stopped playing or making music necessarily, but it's been a long time since I've recorded any. But again, I'm just going to keep it really simple. The first few things that I've got, that I've decided to record quote unquote properly, are very simple. But I'm going to share all my phone demos as well. They'll be on Bandcamp, or it'll be available to download from Gumroad along with the book itself. Right, so I'll do one more. But yeah, that's the plan. Hopefully I'll stick at it for the whole year, because it'd be fun to look back on as well. It's definitely a lot of figure, a lot of studies. I've been really trying to get back into not only improving my knowledge of anatomy and figure and the practice of doing it, but also finding different ways of doing it alongside different mediums. So it's very figure heavy, but I've started trying to do a few more botanicals, a few more clothing and draping things. I'm slowly getting back into not only using my own references again, make it more journalistic, hopefully the next go round or for the next couple of months. As in like a journal, not journalistic. I don't know whether that means something different, more current affairs based. But yeah. Where was I going? I don't know. I'm just waffling again. But yeah, I'm sure I'll bore you with it again when it comes out. It'll be free with a paid option. So I've said in previous videos that work has quite considerably dried up in terms of commissions. I don't know whether it's AI, I don't know whether it's me. It's just how it is sometimes. Oh, come on, I'll do one more. The waffle isn't over. So, yeah, I'm not wanting to paywall what I do necessarily, but I'm trying to find different avenues of generating funds, let's say. So I do have a Patreon that I do try and share things most days, what I've been getting up to. And of course the book will be quote unquote free or available for people who are on the paid tier. But yeah, I'm going to try and start getting back into TikTok because I was starting to generate a little bit of money on there and blah, blah, blah. But again, it's not about, that isn't my only drive, but I do need to find different ways of making some income. But it will be free. And if that's what you can afford, and if that's what you want to, you know, I understand that it's not going to be the most entertaining book, but it might be useful as some sort of study aid for yourself, or just, you know, you might just be a bit nosy. Maybe you just like, you know, whatever this is, and you want to support me in that sense, you know, all of that would be greatly appreciated. But just having a look and, you know, patting me on the head is also enough. And I want to, you know, I want to be, or at least attempt to be, in my very own modest way, a force for good, a force for creativity. Maybe force isn't the right word. Sounds quite forceful, which I'm not aiming to be. But yeah, the conversation's mostly on AI, isn't it? And I want to try and counter that a little bit in my own little way, and share my mistakes, show my learning, and the benefits of doing something creative, the fun, the emotion, the release, the fact that it draws you out of yourself. Which sounds like a pun, but it isn't. And yeah, it's a new way to look at the world. It's a new way to appreciate life. But anyway, being all philosophical. But that's continuous line. That's the way that I approach this sort of thing. Again, it's great for practicing, just starting, just getting out of your heads and being observant. But you've given yourself that slack where you can say, well, it's never going to be perfect. It's very much part of this style, and mistakes and those very human marks come through quite nicely in this technique, I think. And again, like I say, it helps your observation, it helps your line quality if that's what you're wanting to do. And yeah, you can do thousands in a day if you wanted, although you'd probably get a bit tired of that. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you. I know I tend to waffle on a little bit, but hopefully with the practice and the commitment of doing one of these a week, I'll start to be a little bit more concise and deliberate with what I'm talking about. But until then, thank you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.